gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hello, my name is Roger Harris. I'm your guest host today. This is my first opportunity as guest host. Feel a little like a teenage boy getting his first kiss. Just a little scared and a little excited, but I'm proud to be here this morning. We have with us today Mike Philback, former mayor of Shelby, also Andy Debin, former member of the North Carolina House of Representatives, and a guest host with me today is Dennis Bailey. Dennis is a former chair of the Republican Party in Cleveland County and former city councilman, and most importantly, an Air Force veteran. Dennis, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, let's get started. All 12 jurors have now been picked in the first criminal trial of a former president of the United States. Donald Trump faces 34 felony counts related to falsifying business records. Mr. Trump is accused of having an affair with a porn star in 2006, which is not illegal, and then directing a payoff to keep the encounter from the public during the 2016 election, and then falsifying business records to cover it all up, which is illegal. So many questions. What impact will the trial have on this year's election? If he's found guilty, is it possible Trump could be sentenced to prison? Will we likely learn anything new from the trial? And will Trump testify in his own defense? Lots to talk about. Mike, get us started.
Well, I don't think that this is the best case that they have against Trump. The one in Georgia is actually beginning to look rather shaky because of the continuing problems of the DA down there, the prosecutor. But that great conservative, Ruth Marcus, with the Washington Post, y'all do know that was tongue-in-cheek, right?
Right.
She's about as far left as they come. She starts out her article on April 14th saying the shakiest case against Donald Trump will be the first to go to trial. And she says, it's not hard to imagine that the jurors will balk. First, it only takes one to produce a hung jury. Moreover, she says, a key witness in the case, Michael Cohen, is a serial, admitted, and convicted liar. Perhaps one reason federal prosecutors did not pursue the election law case against Trump in early 2021. So this case was a misdemeanor. Through all sorts of twists and turns, this prosecutor in New York has tried to make it a felony, which has a longer period before it's out of date and can't be tried. And so I think it's a shaky case from the beginning. It's got a judge who basically convicted Trump already before he even started, that has a record of being overturned more than any judge up there. So, and then finally, and because of all these things, the grounds for appeal are great, according to Ruth Marcus, as in the Washington Post. So, in the Wall Street Journal, they have a quote that it's not clear these criminal charges will seek Trump. In fact, it's possible the trial in New York will even help him. But this is by far the shakiest. I don't think it should even be in court, but the answer, of course, if he's convicted, it could hurt him, especially with independent voters. It won't hurt him much with the Republican base, but it could hurt him with those thin, narrow people in the middle that can go either way. But I think there will be an appeal. Don't know if there's time to be in a successful appeal. I think the likelihood, because it's in Manhattan, where 87% of the people voted for Joe Biden, I think it's going to be hard for him to get a fair trial. I'm not convinced he can. And I know two jurors are actually seated, Roger, that for whatever reason later already have asked to be dismissed, saying upon further thought they didn't think they could be impartial.
Went from 7 to 5 and then back up to 12 yesterday.
I think we don't know the outcome. I hope he doesn't testify in his own defense, because he could, like some other people I know, be his own worst enemy.
All right. Andy, what are your thoughts?
Roger, this thing just confuses me so much. I mean, after watching Donald Trump all these years, I would have thought he would have been the type of guy that would have been bragging about having sex with a porn star. I mean, truly. I mean, guys, don't you believe this would just be right up his alley, so to speak? I mean,
You do need to remember he had been married to Melania a few months when this is alleged to have happened.
well, that doesn't seem to slow him down other times. I mean, my goodness. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, and to me, this looks like this was a business transaction. Basically, I mean, I watched.
Except she did not get paid. She's made that clear in her own interviews.
Well,
It was a
I mean,
rendezvous one time.
well, and it's true. Now, I watched, Netflix has got a documentary about her through this whole thing, and to answer your question, Mike, no, there's no nudity
I was
on
going
it.
to say, I'm sure you've watched it.
Yes, I have. I have. You know, and Angie watched it with me just to make sure, so it was fine.
Read her book, Lord have mercy.
No, I have not read the book, but I imagine it would make your eyes sort of cry a little bit. But anyway, and she says I'm not a victim of this. I did it. It was consensual. It wasn't my best moment. I shouldn't have done it. But and let's face it, she did it because he was famous. I mean, that's what that was all about. I mean, and I mean, I don't know how many adult movies she's made over the years. She started out she was a stripper, and she become a pretty well-known stripper, and evidently she made a good amount of money, and that's how she got into pornography. And, I don't know how all this transpired when it was all said and done, but I don't understand why he did what he did and how he did it. It looks to me like this, knowing to see how he has bragged about all of the women and the things he's done, why all of a sudden did he have a conscience? I'd really like to know, Dennis, why all of a sudden has he got a conscience about stuff? I mean, you can't walk back a lifetime of the things he said and done. And all of a sudden, with a woman that has got a pretty crazy background, to say just to be kind, and now he's trying to go around the horn, so to speak, to try to cover it up, and there's no covering it up.
Well, don't forget, though, this was hush money. He probably didn't have any real regrets, but he was at that time running in a Republican primary where that would be a big deal to a lot of people. It was hush money.
That's right.
Well, but what about all the stuff he had already done beside
He didn't want
her?
it compounded.
Well,
He had already made the statement about grabbing women's private parts.
Well, as
I'm
Betsy
glad you edited that.
as Betsy would say, Mike. I mean, how do you make all this stuff he's done his whole life make it worse? Good night, nurse. It can't be any worse than it was, and it didn't bother people. So I would have said a lot of these guys out here would pat him on the back and say, "Way to go, guy!"
And the feds chose not to pursue this case over the hush money. It took this way far out prosecutor in New York, who, along with that attorney general up there, have made it their life's aim to convict Donald
Well,
Trump.
in my opinion, Roger, if this ain't the worst thing this guy's done, I think this is a lot of hue and cry over nothing. I think he's done a whole lot worse than this, and this is, to me, is a lot of waste of time.
Dennis, your thoughts?
Well, President Trump's not my favorite person. I liked his policies, but I hated it when he spoke. But whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? Okay, now, let's just assume that he is. Who cares? Okay, who cares? I mean, we have a litany of prior presidents that have done things with cigars and, and snuck, women into the, please, leave me be.
Well, we had one president who left his DNA on a woman's dress.
Yes.
Well,
In the Oval Office.
I'm talking about the same
But
one.
Dennis, you know
okay?
yourself with cigars, you got to have them in a humidor. I mean, that's just important.
Just, I'm out.
You brought it up.
But it seems that, all this is doing really is helping him. I mean, every lawsuit filed, every attempt after him seems to bring more people into his camp and more money into his campaign. I think it's because people see the injustice of it all. When you see so many charges against people like Biden, that never get prosecuted at all. And it's things that I would have gone to prison over had I done that while I was in the Air Force. You know, operating under the manual for courts martial that he signed. Okay? So, you know, that seems wrong, and I think the public sees that justice is not balanced. Is he going to go to prison? No, I don't think he'll go to prison. Will he testify?
Oh, you
Lord,
better believe he will.
can't stop himself.
He can't.
He can't stop himself.
And if he testifies, of course, he's open for cross-examination then.
Yes, he is.
And as we say, the Lord have mercy.
You know, the one thing he could go to prison for this, not for conviction of this, I don't think that'd put him in prison.
Perjury.
But no, I think he can, I'm assuming none of that. I'm assuming he could get caught in contempt of court if he loses his cool.
Well, he's already
That's
supposedly.
usually a jail sentence, so not a prison sentence. So it's
Yeah, you
you know,
spend the night.
Temporary, a
Yeah.
3-day deal.
Well,
3
supposedly
days,
he's
30
already
days.
violated the gag order 6 times, according to the prosecutor.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know
there's
if
a
he
lot of
has.
argument, and the gag order is unconstitutional.
So I don't know. That's just what I read this morning. So I don't know if he has or not. I would think if he had,
the
judge
press is
would have
trying
jumped
it in the press. Why can't he
I
try
think
it
they
in the
should
press?
move his trial to Alabama. It'd be over in 2 days.
I don't think it'd be that long.
I don't know, these potential jurors seem to be taking the case seriously. I
They
mean,
do.
I know
They
it's in
seem like-
Manhattan and all that, but they seem to be taking it seriously. You know, when they bring in, what is it, a group of 100, and they ask, can you be impartial? And about half of them usually raise their hand, and they seem to be taking it seriously. Even the two that initially said, yeah, I can be impartial, and they thought about it overnight and said, you know, I really can't. They were able to seat 12, which surprised me. I figured it'd take a month to get a
I
jury.
did too.
One of them I saw interviewed that left Roger, the jury, and apparently somehow her name had gotten to some of her friends, and she felt like that was going to keep her from being impartial, apparently because she knew her friends despised Trump and wanted him convicted.
Yeah. Yep, I saw
Well,
that as well. They described the occupation
Yeah.
and lots of things, and a lot of folks
Well,
kind of
and
identified
that's the thing. These people need to be protected till this thing's over because, I mean, there's always going to be some nuts out there that these people could be put in danger. And that has got to be taken care of because let's face it, there are some people out there that are so polarized on both sides of this issue. I mean, somebody can get killed over this so easy. And we've got to be cognizant of that.
I agree. All right, moving on then. Let's look at our second question. Republican House Speaker Tim Moore said Wednesday that the General Assembly plans to fund an additional $300 million for private school vouchers known as Opportunity Scholarships. The program uses taxpayer money to fund private school scholarships, and it was expanded to nearly all families this year, even to the most wealthy. What do you think, gentlemen? Should taxpayer money go to private schools, which are primarily religious schools, but not all? Should the General Assembly be giving public money to affluent families when traditional public schools and state charter schools have such great needs? Andy, start us off.
Well, this is a dilemma that's been going on and talked about and kicked around forever. And, you know, I kind of go back to the founding of our country. Thomas Jefferson founding the University of Virginia. And we go back, education has been the bedrock this country was founded upon. It was always been that the best way to have the kind of citizens that we need is to have an educated citizen. In our Constitution of North Carolina is to have the education to be as free as possible, or as economic, I forget how exactly the reading is, but it's to be able to have it as economically cheap as possible so it can be as available as it can be to the most people. And that is the dilemma. Now, I know we can get into all this argument, well, what are they teaching, how are they teaching it, and Mike's going to go off and he's going to tell me, oh, they're turning everybody into communists and all this and the heathens and all that stuff, and away we're going to go off.
All I've said is they've produced more socialists at Chapel Hill than any other university in the East Coast.
Oh, my goodness, and away we go already.
All right.
But, I mean, that's just kind of stuff we go. But, you know, I have a real concern about there are private schools that I'm sure are doing just a wonderful job. But are we going to start giving this to homeschoolers too.
Absolutely.
I mean, it keeps going on. There is no way that, and how are we going to know what kind of curriculum are they actually teaching? And I don't think we want to have total control, but we just got to make sure those kids, we are getting the type of education that we really need.
All right. Well, thank you. And before we let Mike tell us about the communists, we're going to take a break just for a few minutes.
Today I'd like to make everyone aware of the risk of skimmers. First, let me tell you what a skimmer is. A skimmer is a device that is often installed at a gas pump that is used to steal credit card information. When you use your card at the pump, a skimmer is disguised to look like a card reader and collect both card and PIN numbers that can be used to replicate and create counterfeit cards. Now let me tell you some of the best practices to protect yourself from skimmers at the pump. Always ensure that the tamper tape at the pump you're using is intact. Skimmers are installed inside the pump housing, and this tape ensures that the pump has not been opened. Always try to use the pump closest to the entrance to the store. Skimmers are often installed at the pump furthest from the store and the camera systems. Pay inside whenever possible. Cover PIN pad when entering your PIN number to protect against pinhole cameras.
Hi, I'm Shara Miller, the host of Artworks. Each month we bring to you wonderful, talented artists from here in Cleveland County and the region. We have artists, we have potters, we have painters, we have musicians, we have actors. We just have wonderful artists that come to you and tell you about all that they're doing, their creativity, what inspires them. Join me here on Artworks each month on C19. You can also watch us online at c19.tv.
Welcome back. Michael, tell us your thoughts about vouchers.
Well, I'll take a little bit of issue at the premise. I know technically the checks for opportunity scholarships are made out to the private schools, but the checks follow the North Carolina student to wherever they choose to go. In 1970 to 74, Roger, I was the recipient at Gardner-Webb College and then University of what amounted to an opportunity scholarship because the state had made a decision to give a certain amount of money, nothing like what it cost, but I got several $100s a semester credited to my account because they wanted to take pressure off of the university system and the state college system. When people went to private schools, that was cheaper for them to do than to build more colleges and universities. So this is just bringing it down to secondary schools, and it's a philosophical question. Do you think it ought to follow the student, or do you think it ought to go to the public school, period? You know, rich people in public schools pay the same amount for an education in terms of a fee that anybody else does, except for the lunch programs and all that. Because it's free. No matter what your income is, you don't pay for tuition to send them to public schools. I have 2 grandchildren at Gaston Christian, and I know that my kids are paying something like $18,000 or $20,000 a year between the 2 of them for them to go. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it ought to follow the student. I think they have to give more this time because they've opened it up. It's tier 1, 2, and 3, and tier 1 took all of the money that's in the budget. And so the more middle class people and somewhat upper middle class people, yeah, and don't forget it's a sliding scale. The more you make, the less you get for your kids. So, you know, that doesn't mean they're not going to fund public education. Didn't they add $700 million to public education this year or something like that? They've raised it every year. But it's a philosophical question. Folks on the left always have the argument about the rich, which was kind of embedded in the question. But I think the student ought to get some credit regardless, and it is tiered.
Dennis, your thoughts?
Well, first I'm going to disagree with Mr. Philbeck. They don't pay the same amount because that comes out of taxes. The schools come out of taxes. So let's think about this for a moment. The people that make $10,000 a year pay no taxes. The people that make 20, you know. So when you get up to people that are making $400,000 plus a year, okay, they're paying almost 50% of their income in taxes.
Yeah,
so
but-
they're not paying the same
But it's
because
all-
they're paying into taxes.
Yeah, it's only 4.5% this year, though, to North Carolina income taxes, plus whatever part of the sales tax. I didn't mean to imply, they're paying enough taxes to help pay for their children's education, but they don't have to pay for them to be directly in the public schools.
I understand that, nor they're not writing checks
I
directly.
may have not been
but
clear, which would not be the first
It's
time.
always bugged me when it's, oh, the rich man should pay more. I'm sorry, do they use the roads more? Do they use the healthcare system more? No, they use it less. So that's one of the things that bugs me about that. And quite frankly, we wouldn't have the issue if public schools, Cleveland County not included in this, if public schools, regular traditional public schools did a better job. Now, I know that their hands are tied behind their backs with social issues and with discipline issues and things like that. I think if we went back to paddling, a lot of that would go away. I got my butt paddled.
And you deserved
And
every one of them,
every
Dennis.
one of them, absolutely.
Because I was there watching it.
But, you know, we've seen charter schools without capital funding do better than traditional public schools. And because of that, we've got to change something on one side to take away the demand on the other. That's my thoughts on
All
it.
right. And I, Andy alluded to it. Private schools are permitted to do some things that traditional schools can't do, like discriminate. Private schools can discriminate against a religion, against disability, against academics, against lifestyles. Private schools are unregulated. There's no state requirement about how many days or hours of instruction. There's no state requirement about curriculum. There's no state testing for most of those schools. And there are just some really unusual schools out there. I'll give you one example. Durham's Mount Zion Christian Academy receives state funding. Mount Zion Christian Academy requires, not requests, requires that their teachers demonstrate their relationship with the Holy Spirit by speaking in tongues. And that is a requirement to be a faculty member at that campus. So there's no regulation for these, and we're not talking about a little bit of money.
That's called religious liberty.
It is, and I don't object to them at all having that as their faith, but should they be getting taxpayer money to fund that faith?
The student is getting the taxpayer money. It just has to be the check made to the school to make sure that it helps the child get an education.
Here's my thing, Roger, and I allude some to what Dennis just said, but I have had this conversation with Wes numerous times, and he's very involved in charter schools. I have said, if we could take the public traditional schools and use the same yardsticks and same rules and regulations and apply them to the public schools, we could get the same outcomes. Yeah. But
Probably not.
I bet you
Because you
would.
still have parents, on the charter schools, you have parents that care enough to drive their children to and from school, where at traditional public schools, you get everybody.
And have the means to do it.
Right, and have the means to do it.
but you still would be able to get,
They'd be closer.
yeah,
I'll admit they'll be closer.
A lot closer.
All right, let's move on. DHS Secretary Mayorkas was impeached by the House in February. The House formally referred the issue to the Senate on Tuesday, and the Senate dismissed the charges in about the time it took me to drive over here and drive back home this morning. Bill Clinton was impeached, and he finished his term. The House Judiciary Committee opened an impeachment inquiry against Barack Obama in 2013. That didn't get off the ground. Trump was impeached twice, and he will be the GOP nominee. The House is still considering impeachment against Joe Biden, which is going nowhere. Impeachment used to be extremely rare. Does it mean anything anymore? Has impeachment just become another political weapon? Dennis, start us off.
I don't think it means a dang thing anymore, except an ability to, or inability to impact elections. That's really all I think it is. Because when that man stood there with that crooked finger and said, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, okay, and then was proven that he did, nothing happened.
It depends on what the meaning of is.
Yeah. It's nothing but a weapon. I don't understand how there's different types of justice. There should be one type of justice. That's it. And it doesn't happen. The cover-up, that took down Nixon didn't take down anybody that did cover-ups after that. Okay, so yeah, it's nothing but a weapon.
Andy?
I don't even know if it's a weapon anymore. I think people just ignore it now. I really do. I just don't see, in some of these things, well, like they did with Obama, it really didn't matter that much. With Clinton, it was just about sex. And it's kind of, in some of this stuff about Trump, let's face it, this thing right now going on in New York is about sex. Stuff like that it's titillating to people.
Sells newspapers.
Yeah, it sells newspapers. And that's why, and a guy asked me yesterday, he said, how many more movies do you think Stormy Daniels has sold? She was at the end of her career. And all of a sudden, I guarantee you, I bet she's had an uptick in her sales. She even made a new one, they said, that about Trump and had her something in the White House. So I guarantee you, she's made a ton of money off this for an older porn star.
For me to be as bad as I was in high school, I just want you to understand I've never considered looking for a movie of hers. Just wanted you to know that, okay?
Well, I believe in doing in-depth research for this show.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, I think that impeachments have become a complete waste of time and are a complete waste of time unless it's a bad enough offense to gain the support of a number in both political parties. The reason Nixon resigned was because enough Republicans would have made the 2/3 majority in the Senate and were going to convict him if he were impeached in the House. That was never the case with Clinton. It was never the case with Trump. It's not the case with Biden. Mayorkas probably ought to go. He's got an open border. He's proud of it. But, you know, so does Joe Biden, and so does those 50-something senators that have the majority in the Senate that are Democrats. But it's not going to happen, so I think we're just wasting our time. And actually, Roger, it doesn't now carry with the public the gravity that the founders intended it to do.
I agree. If you're going to have impeachment, there has to be public support. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. All right, let's go to the lightning round. Got a couple of minutes left. Dennis?
Well, I was going to talk about the college, but I just have to bring something up, and it's something that I was just made aware of earlier this week. Carteret County had 3 business owners that are now suing their Board of Education for violating the calendar law. And that'll be the second lawsuit that I know of. Union County, decided to bail out when they figured out what the tactic was going to be. And basically it's, you have to admit that you violated the law. And once that happens and you're convicted, then you get to pay all their legal fees. So they run up the legal fees to where it's punitive. So I worry. I understand that some of our school board members believe that that what they're doing is right, and they have to choose between 2 laws, one that says they have to provide a quality education, and one that says you can't start before this date. One's an interpretation, one's a law.
All right. Andy?
Well, since I have been appointed the local reporter for People magazine, I might as well continue on. This week, Jason Kelsey, brother of Travis Kelsey, or better known as Mr. Taylor Swift, was involved in a stunt. He lost his Super Bowl ring in a tub of chili. A tub of chili.
I've not heard this story.
In Cincinnati. It was a stunt for some show. It was a scavenger hunt. They put it in a tube sock, tied it up with some other stuff, and they went in it, and everybody was supposed to find this stuff. And I don't know if they forgot it was in there or what, and it got tossed in the trash. And he didn't seem to be too worried about it. Can you imagine? I don't know what the actual value of that ring is, but he's lost his ring and doesn't seem too bothered about it.
Good gracious. All right, well, your guest host didn't manage time very well. Mike, we'll give you extra time next week. Thank you for being with us this week on Political Smackdown. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. And from all of us at Political Smackdown, be kind to somebody this week.